Hello. Do you ever catch yourself saying, I just don't have the time? Time to finish everything work demands of me. Time to be truly present with our children. Time for a proper conversation with the partner. Time to fix the car, weed the garden, mow the lawn. We hurry, we scurry, and we worry. And sometimes, for no clear reason, that low-level hum of anxiety starts to interfere with life. Today, I'm asking the question, to heal distress, can spiritual practices work? Can they work with sleep, with concentration, even with our health? We might find ourselves snapping at people we'd normally get along with, or perhaps we've noticed headaches becoming more frequent, digestive upset, or a heaviness in the chest. We would not be alone. According to research, 1 in 4 of us experiences a mild mental health issue every year. We worry, and even if we never receive a diagnosis, we might still find ourselves feeling irritable, feeling low or anxious. Never mind having a trauma. Never mind having a disaster. It's so common to feel that something inside us is misaligned, that something needs to change, perhaps inwardly. Could it be, I wonder, that our spirit needs a little healing? Can we heal distress? And can spiritual practices help? Of course, stress is not new, nor are the remedies people turn to. A holiday, a glass of wine, a walk in the park. Some help more than others. Some distract, others numb. But lasting relief, the kind that brings contentment, not just escape, often demands something deeper. So let's start with the basics. Obviously, healthy food, enough sleep, time outdoors, saying no now and again, and yet how often do we resist even doing those things? I don't have time. I'm too tired. I'll start next week. Perhaps the issue lies not just in the world outside us, but in our own expectations, what we demand of ourselves, what we fear we might lose, or what we imagine we must gain. So let's not just fixate on the problem itself, but widen the lens a little. Consider too what gives our lives meaning, what we truly hold dear. And this, I think, is where spiritual teaching can play a role. Not as prescriptions necessarily, but as gentle prompts that ask us to notice how our feelings are shaped, not only by what happens, but what we believe should happen. In other words, they invite us to reflect not just on the world, but on our expectations of it. So rather than constantly reacting, we can choose to put time aside for reflection. Now, some of us do this through journaling, or walking quietly in the evening, or simply noticing our thoughts without jumping to conclusions. Therapists call it self-reflection. Spiritual traditions call it meditation. They call it prayer or contemplation. Meditation is, in its essence, a practice of watchfulness, of stepping back from the swirl of thought and seeing it just as that, thought. Challenging, yes, especially when anxiety is loud. Not easy with a mind that is easily distracted by fearful thoughts, or a mind that is prone to wander off into imagining the worst. But with practice, it's possible to gain distance from the mind's chatter, learning to become more aware of one's surroundings, listening more fully to what others are saying. With this attitude of mindfulness, it is said we become less occupied by our mistakes, less occupied by the past and the future. For we see things as they are, as they really are, rather than in terms of our prejudiced desires and fears. From a spiritual perspective, being in the moment brings about a consciousness of what I like to call the eternal now. This is an illuminating perception that transcends time-bound concerns. The religious believer thinks that it flows from a divine mind, which is both present within and also beyond time and place. Some time ago, Chinese leader Chiang Kai-shek wrote, "In meditation, the source of strength is oneself. When one prays, he goes to a source of strength greater than his own." So, meditation for the religious believer can mean focusing on sacred writing or on nature as divinely created and inspired. In silence, in stillness, something deeper may be glimpsed, what some describe as peace beyond understanding. Of course, not everyone finds meditation easy. In such cases, conversational prayer may feel more natural. Creating a space for who I regard as the Lord, by talking with the Lord, helps me notice the divine presence as it finds a home in my thoughts and feelings. Then a divine presence of peace can uplift me. A divine presence of light can illuminate me. That's why I think that when the love of self no longer rules our hearts, then we rise above our worries concerning the temporary things of this world. So, for me, prayer is simply talking to God like a friend. For other people, it may feel more like connecting with and listening to a divine counsellor whilst sharing one's personal concerns. Christian believers feel they have a relationship with the human face of God. This is a great source of strength and comfort. In their darkest hours, many of them are sustained by their belief that they are loved by the source of all that is good, and then all will be well. I realise to some of you listening to me, prayer might seem like wishful thinking, asking for things. To give God a list of what one wants sounds a bit like children making out a Christmas gift list for Father Christmas to bring down the chimney. And Roman prayers in the old days and sacrifices were often envisaged as legal bargains between deity and worshipper. A modern equivalent of this might be promising to donate money to one charity, only if God takes away one's problems, of course. But instead of all that, true prayer, at least as many religious traditions teach it, true prayer is less about demanding answers and more about listening. Less fix this for me and more help me understand what this means. The Lord's Prayer that Christians say asks to let God's will be done. Søren Kierkegaard once wrote, "The function of prayer is not to influence God, but rather to change the nature of the one who prays." In Buddhism, suffering, distress and worry is often traced to attachment. Attachment is wanting, clinging, insisting. If you are feeling impatient and frustrated and want something in a hurry, what are you saying to yourself? It is likely to include the word Must. I must have more money. I must have more success. I must have immediate gratification or more appreciation. I must be right. I must get my own way. So we confuse wants with needs. There was a guy lost at sea, Stephen Callahan, lost at sea for over 2 months. He wrote of how deprivation stripped life back to its essentials: food, shelter, company, and how his previous life had seemed overmuch complicated by comparison. His suffering brought clarity about what really matters and what is not worth worrying over. Emanuel Swedenborg, as an 18th century spiritual philosopher, argued that peace is not something we find by chasing worldly success. True contentment, he said, comes when we shift the centre of our lives away from ego towards what he called heavenly loves. Love of what is true, love of what is good, love for other people. Sometimes, in distress, even the devout people find themselves questioning, why has this happened? Why was I not protected? Has God turned away? Doubt, too, can be part of the spiritual path. A necessary struggle. The fear of thinking differently from what deep down we realise is true, or fear of acting against what we suspect deep down is good. So the spiritual path inevitably leads to an inner state of anxiety until we work through the inner struggle and resolve the tension between the two sides of our developing nature. We might not place any confidence in what is spiritual from beyond ourselves. Instead, we could simply face what we fear, only with our own courage. If so, Swedenborg points out that our crisis would remain superficial and bring little lasting good. However, from an internal conflict, wisdom can emerge. As the psalmist writes, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And many religious people would say they've felt this, not just thought it. Felt it in moments of deep prayer. With a wiser perspective on life, we may come to see a stressful event as a learning opportunity. Perhaps the catalyst for positive life changes. For example, being more intimate with the loved one, taking better care of oneself, being more appreciative of the everyday aspects of life, or having the courage to try new things in silence, in surrender, in the trust that something greater than ourselves is holding the pieces together, even when we feel most broken. To sum up what I'm saying, there are no quick fixes, not just in therapy, not just in spirituality, but genuine healing, especially spiritual healing, occurs by the reception of what flows in from the divine. This does not mean all physical ailments are instantly cured, but that restoration and order in the spirit lead to healing in the mind, and sometimes then even in the body. But there are glimpses, moments in which something shifts, a light comes in, a burden lifts, a new way opens. And perhaps in those moments we realise that what we really needed was not more time, but more presence. If you like what I'm saying about emotional healing, why not click the link to 7 ways to forgive if there's no apology? Thank you for listening to me.